Hello everyone, my name is Abdul Nawab. I introduced myself earlier. I'm an officer for Los Rios ACM, and this is my short presentation about developing a growth mindset in the field of technology, and honestly any field that you want to pursue. So a lot of people have this preconceived notion that you need to be a super genius, some tech savvy type of individual to succeed in the field of technology, but that simply isn't true. No one is born intelligent. We all have sort of a base that we're born with, and it's not fixated. We can all grow, and success isn't really determined by your natural ability to do things. It's more so an equation of your effort and your grit that you put into it. Taking longer to complete certain assignments or tasks is completely okay as long as you aren't tarnishing your learning environment and you're actually gaining something from doing the assignment. I think that's the most important thing. The more mistakes that you make, the more that you learn, so never get dumbed down because you're making a similar mistake often. It's okay. It's all right to ask for help. There's a lot of resources out there. There's tutoring, Discords, there's a lot of stuff that can help you. One of the key things that I want to illustrate is that you need to start small and you need to gradually increase because this will allow for you to remain consistent. You're going to encounter a learning curve at some point. Maybe when you start programming, everything comes kind of naturally to you. It's really easy to you. Eventually, you'll hit a wall where you're just not getting it. And maybe that wall comes sooner than later, but that's okay. You have to push through and remember that anybody can learn this material. And the second to last bullet point that I put, it might seem a little weird, but you have to make the decision to be smart enough. Because at the end of the day, all it boils down to is mindset and really having the determination to keep going. And confidence is key. So here's a little graph of something called the plateau of latent potential. So when you're starting to learn something, you think it's going to be a super linear path, that you're just going to get better day by day, and that you're just going to be in a certain position in a year. But what actually happens is you go into this valley of disappointment. It's an exponential graph, right? And the thing is, you're going to be in that valley of disappointment for a while. You're not going to be learning as many things as you would like. You're not going to be getting that internship next year. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're not in that position or you're not qualified enough. And that's okay. You just have to keep going to surpass that valley of disappointment. And one thing I wanted to illustrate is that the valley of disappointment is recursive. You're going to continuously go into the valley of disappointment. You're going to be stuck on something. You're going to be taking extra long to learn something, and that's okay. So a good analogy that I like to make is comparing it to exercise. In high school, I used to run track and cross country, and I remember when I first started, I was really slow. I was actually the slowest person on the team. But I told myself that I wanted to be qualifying for varsity. That was my only goal. It was a very hefty goal at that time. I wanted to be on varsity. So the next year and a half approximately, I trained really seriously. And after that time period, I experienced a lot of drawbacks. I got injured. I had certain things that just weren't working out. But eventually, I ended up being the fastest person on my team. And it's not to brag, but it's just to show that if you really put your time and effort into something, you can surprise yourself, basically. And the second bullet point, if you're trying to get fit or in shape, you have to work out every day. Just like coding or learning something, you have to do it every day. No matter how long, consistency is the most important thing. And that's more important than how much you do. It's how long can you do something? How many days can you do it? Whether that be 5 minutes or 5 hours. You won't see progress all the time. You'll feel stagnant, but you actually are making progress just by doing whatever you're doing. And you have to develop a training plan. And I always say that the best training plan is the one that you stick to. It doesn't matter which book you pick. What matters is sticking to the book that you pick, or the videos, or the resources. There's a bunch of stuff online. And you have to reflect and see how far you have come after you first start. Because you will become a much better coder or a programmer after 6 months of coding. You'll see how far you come and you'll be, in a sense, proud of yourself. So to keep going when things get tough, you have to find your why. This is pretty general, but a why is specific to each person. Maybe somebody is motivated by financial reasons. Maybe somebody is motivated because they want to challenge themselves. Everybody's reason or why differs, right? Your why can change. So you have to adjust to your why. Maybe you started because you wanted to make a lot of money. But then you realize that wasn't really that important to you, and you started to enjoy the challenge and figuring out this puzzle, right? The key attribute to this why that you develop, that it has to be consistent. It has to be constant. Because when you're struggling and you're all the way down low, you have to be able to call back to it. And the only thing that you can call back to is something that is constant. And the second to last highlight is that passion is something discovered. It doesn't sprout from nothingness. So passion, people think that you're just born passionate about something, but what actually develops passion is just by trying things out. You'll never know if you like something until you give it a shot. And I put this last bullet point here, hitting a piece of wood or a log with a hammer, right? So if I have a really thick piece of wood and I keep hitting it, eventually it will break. But what we're focused on is breaking that wood. But what you should be focused on is all the work that you put into breaking this wood. So you can't focus on somebody that's 5 years ahead of you when you're just starting to chop at this wood. You can't focus on somebody that's even 10 years ahead of you because they've already done so much work. But you will be there eventually. It just takes time and effort. So here are some personal and anecdotal tips that have helped me. When I get really stuck on something, I'll take a break, which is pretty general, but I'll do something that distracts my brain so that I can actually internalize the information. So one break that I take that's really popular is just by going for a walk around my block. And there are some popular figures that do this, such as Freud and Einstein, and they're actually known for going on at least one walk a day. So the reason that I think walking is really effective is because you're changing your environment constantly. And the human brain is kind of weird. If you're stuck in the same place physically, you can kind of get like distracted more easily. So to move around and change your environment, it allows you to come back to what you're struggling with a new set of eyes, basically. I also started to streak my habits. So if I wake up in the morning and I spend a little too long on my phone, I would write that down. If I took too long to get ready in the morning, or if I took too long for my nighttime routine, I would write that down. And if it was something that I wasn't really fond of, then I would work on trying to improve that by looking at what I streaked down. And even though I wasn't where I wanted to be, I would have to positively talk to myself, which is a really difficult thing to do. It feels kind of like fake, cliche, to actually talk to yourself positively, but it is very effective. And that ties in with being honest with yourself. If you're not enjoying something, maybe you need a redirect. Maybe there's a different thing that you're more interested in, because you should be enjoying what you're doing, and you got to work towards that every day. And the big question, what if I fail? What if I don't succeed? And failure, in my opinion, is only when you decide to stop pursuing something. Sometimes redirection is needed. Sometimes failure can show you how strong you actually are. And an anecdotal experience that I would like to bring up is I was never really good at math. I don't think I got higher than a C in a math class in high school. But starting college, picking computer science as my major, I noticed the list of math classes that I had to take, so I kind of had to make the choice to be good at math, or else I would not succeed. And the point where I hit a wall was this class called Calculus 2, really rigorous, really hard, for me at least. And I actually failed the class, but that failure messed with my confidence so much. It was so negative at the time, but it actually allowed me to study harder and get better at calculus, so that the next time I took it, I actually passed with a much better grade, and I was able to move past that. Sure, it didn't feel good to fail, but it actually increased my growth as a person, and that's what really matters. So that ties into the second to last bullet point. Failure can be an opportunity in disguise. Sometimes it helps you more than you think it does, but you just can't see that because you're in it. And last but not least, you have to have the confidence to fail. It's okay. You can get back up. So that's about failure. It's not that big of a deal. It's okay. Everybody goes through it. So these are a couple quotations that I thought were really important and monumental. So this is one from Kobe Bryant. He's a figure of work ethic, which I think is really important to have in computer science or any tech industry or anything you want to do. And the quote is, "I'm reflective only in the sense that I learn to move forward. I reflect on my mistakes with a purpose." So say you weren't the best student a couple of years ago. That's okay. You're reflecting on it. You understood that you didn't put enough time into your studies, but now you can move forward understanding that you need to put time into what you care about. And I just think that's a very expressive quote. The next one is from Albert Einstein. "Computers are incredibly fast, accurate, and stupid. Humans are incredibly slow, inaccurate, and brilliant. Together they are powerful beyond imagination." And I chose this quote because starting this hackathon, it can be a bit cutthroat maybe, because you might be intimidated by what other people's projects are, you might compare yourself. But the one thing to focus on is just having a good time, because that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to learn something. We're trying to create something. That's all it boils down to. Just enjoying what you're doing. And if anybody has any questions or would like me to go to any other previous slides, I can do that right now. And that's about it. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?